Welcome to the Moral Side of the News. Thanks for spending some time with us. I'm Chris Williams at WHAS 11. John Blim is at a WHAS Crusade-For-Children event, so I'm in here with you this weekend, and our panel is here to discuss topics in the news from a moral perspective. And on this week's program, a business is refusing service to a gay organization. Governor Matt Bevin has weighed in on the court case that followed. Plus, court rules that the Commonwealth of Kentucky must begin supporting those who offer foster care to the children of relatives. We'll discuss those topics with our distinguished panel for this edition of the Moral Side of the News. Reverend Clay Calloway with West Louisville Ministers Coalition, Rabbi Gayla Rooks with the Temple, Father Joe Graffis, Archdiocese of Louisville, and Father Tony Smith with St. Lawrence Catholic Church. Thank for all of you for joining us on what has been another somber week, a sobering week with the news out of Florida with the shooting at the high school there, with the death toll well over a dozen and the injured well over a dozen. It begs the question of, here we go again, what is going to be different now that we move forward, and what is the discussion that must be had to try to prevent these from happening again in our communities?
I think the first thing is no one can honestly say now's not the time to talk about gun violence, because with this happening so regularly, so frequently, so painfully and devastating to these communities, if we wait for, oh, let's wait a few weeks and let everyone calm down and then talk about gun control, there'll be another one, and then it'll be too late again.
Let me ask you a question, because it was in the first two sentences that you responded, the phrase gun violence was used. Does it water down the problems in our society when we call it gun violence instead of just saying violence, or should we be calling what we saw there and other incidences with shootings gun violence? Should we just be talking about violence as a whole?
No, it is gun violence. It wasn't knife violence. It wasn't bat violence. It wasn't rock violence. It was gun violence. And what's different now, I don't mean to stop your roll,
I'll come back in. Go ahead, roll away.
The same roll. What's different now is the body count. We've added 17 more dead bodies and 14 more injured bodies. That's the difference.
And all those traumatized teens and parents. And one of my points is it's much safer to sit in Congress than to be a school student in the United States of America. And what are we doing about it? They rolled back, or they took out of law President Obama's statement, the mental health issue, so that if you are receiving government funding because you have mental illness and you need government subsidy to live, you now can get a gun again. Even though Obama had taken that away, Trump put it back in. So we're moving backwards on gun control. And I'm not talking about Second Amendment, you have the right to have a gun or multiple guns, but I'm talking about not single shooting guns. And the new,
what do you mean by not single shooting guns? Because we will have people who are watching right now who will say that a handgun with a clip that holds multiple rounds, it shoots multiple. I have a deer hunting rifle that I can put 4 rounds in when I go out in the field to go deer hunting with.
Okay, and 4 rounds is not the same as these huge magazines.
So is it? So then the question is, and I'm asking questions that are obvious. We know how hot this topic is.
The one thing is that most Americans, and even I read this last year, maybe it isn't true anymore, but last year, most Americans, that's still true, but even most members of the NRA wanted some forms of gun control. So, for example, the what is it, the rapid identification criminal check background thing, Trump's administration, for the new budget that's being proposed, cuts that by 16%. That is moving backward. That is not dealing with the fact.
But I think one of the things that, and I'll let Tony, because he's the expert on guns.
Yeah, he's a relative expert.
This is the 18th shooting in the school year in a school this year.
And that doesn't include school buses.
Well, that's just this scary. But we've got to have a common sense discussion about this. And somehow we get to our two sides, or the chasm, and no one talks. What's the middle ground, that keeps everyone safe? I'd like to find that. I don't understand why we need assault weapons. Obviously, maybe police do, but I think hunters need to have you know, their guns, but somewhere along the line we're not coming to a common sense ground. But Tony, you're the expert.
Well, if I may, a lot of responding going on here to something that's tragic, absolutely. But what happened here is...
So this is a trend.
No, listen, I'm talking, okay?
There's a difference between a tragic and a trend.
Excuse
This is
me.
a trend.
Excuse me.
You're right.
Okay. We've heard response, and allow me if I may. We've had so many die, so many wounded, but you look at Chicago and within 2 days we'll have the same thing. Now, in regards to something must be done, I keep
Those
hearing
aren't
that.
in schools.
I'm not, well, I'm just talking, we're talking about gun violence, you said.
Okay, then we should talk about school
Well,
gun
but
shootings.
no,
How
see,
about
by-
that?
That's the point I'm trying to get across. You keep
But
wanting to
it
get
should be
down
both.
to something, and I keep saying to you, okay, now what is it that you want done? You
I want the children of
excuse me,
America to be able to go to school safely.
Excuse me. You mentioned the NRA, you mentioned all these other groups. Yes, I'm for good control as well. You mentioned what the president and the present administration has done in regards to gun laws, whatever like this nature. Okay, I'm for gun laws as well. One of the major difficulties you'll find with looking at any kind of firearm violence is that the laws that are on the books are not being maintained.
That's
Right.
true.
Number two,
You mean enforced or maintained?
Enforced.
maintain,
okay.
and maintain. Now, if I may, first off, language is very important and terms are very important. When you talk about automatic weapons, these are not automatic weapons. When you're talking about all these multiple, whatever you call them, clips or whatever, which is inaccurate, you have to know what you're talking about. An AR-15 it could be a very productive hunting rifle. Okay. Now you say you're not opposed to weapons, firearms, whether short arms, pistols, or firearms, long arms that shoot one at a time, whatever. Okay. Again, and if I may, all this you can add into all of this good stuff. We need to, number one, know what we're talking about. We need to, number one, know that the Constitution does come to play. And number three, my big question to anybody who wants to control, what is it that you want? Because we keep hearing all over the board and there's nothing concrete.
We certainly don't want to move backwards, and that's
not-
what we
tell me
are.
what
Okay,
you
you know one thing I want? I want to get rid of the NRA funding our Congress.
There you go.
Wait, I want to say
There you
this,
go.
okay?
You stop
Go,
that.
where's the camera?
You can start there.
Where's the camera? Here it is now. Okay, wait. This
start there.
woman's name is Bess Kalb, K-A-L-B.
Yes.
And for every member of Congress who tweeted out, thoughts and prayers for
Thoughts
the
and
families,
prayers, thoughts and prayers.
she tweeted back how much money, millions of dollars, each one
Thoughts
of
and
those
prayers.
candidates received from the NRA.
If I may respond,
Please.
Then if you're going to take away the NRA, you're taking away all other
Campaign
Well,
lobbying
let's just start
reform.
there.
Let me ask
Great idea,
what I
great
think may
idea.
be as controversial a question as
Okay.
anyone can ask this week.
Okay.
We hear members and supporters of the NRA to say the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. I have 4 kids. My oldest is 13 years old. Should I start arming my 13-year-old to go to school because he needs to be able to stop a bad guy with a gun?
First off,
That's a controversial question,
Well,
but the question is, only person who can stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun.
Only
Do we need to start
Americans
thinking
think
about
more guns are the answer. No other
I'm
nation in the
reminded,
world.
do you remember the All in the Family series?
Right.
with
Oh, yeah,
Archie Bunker?
Archie Bunker.
And the question was asked one time, to your point, about planes being hijacked, and his solution was arm every passenger. If you do that, you're going to have major shootouts.
Right.
And to have more guns in a school situation, even if someone is trained. For instance, what happened here? If we don't know the situation totally. They said the first responders were there within 15 minutes. Okay. Now, if they had somebody on campus who was armed, what is this person going to do? Where is he going to be stationed?
And that's before the Kentucky legislature this session as it is. We're going to be talking about this in the weeks, months, and years ahead.
Correct.
Hopefully someone will come up with an answer, and hopefully conversations will lead to a solution. But we want to change the topic of conversation to our next topic this morning.
I'm glad we at least had
and
an
that is
opportunity to-
the
Yes.
governor
Talk
is
to me.
urging the
Okay,
Kentucky
there we go.
Supreme Court to rule in favor of a company that refused to print T-shirts for a gay rights festival in Lexington. Governor Bevin says Kentucky should protect the rights of citizens to act according to their conscience. In 2012, the T-shirt company cited Christian beliefs for refusing to make the T-shirts. After a back-and-forth court battle, they won at the state level and they won at the appellate level. Now the Kentucky State Supreme Court has agreed to hear the case. The question for the panel is, should the governor, a sitting governor, get involved in a civil case like this that is headed to the Supreme Court?
The governor has picked this case because it advances his narrative. And the narrative is this: anything that has gay anything connected to it, or Christian anything connected to it, he's going to jump on that bandwagon and ride it to no end. So this is his narrative. That's why he weighed in on it, because it plays to his base and those that support him. Now, as far as the particulars of this particular case, I don't know. I mean, this whole gay debate with the individuals I advocate for economic justice for those who have been left out and locked out, has very little relevance. I mean, one of the best ways that you can practice democracy in America is where you can spend your money. And for this organization in Lexington, I think the Gay Festival, they're trying to get this person to produce T-shirts for them. I don't spend my money with someone that don't want my money and won't give me service. So the easiest thing to do is to go take it to someone else that wants the money. And I have scores of T-shirt manufacturers in West Will be more than happy to produce thousands.
Can I ask you a question?
Okay.
What if they were racist and said, we're not going to make T-shirts, we don't want to sell to black people? And you're right, we don't want your money, go spend it somewhere else. Is that okay?
Well, I don't know.
This
I'm
is a
talking about the
question
particulars of this
Well,
case.
if you're talking about the particulars of this case, you have to realize why did the Superior Courts overturn?
They did it over the freedom of speech, saying they did not want to push the agenda of the organization they were making
Exactly.
the T-shirts for.
And they overturned the
This company will say they
commission?
will certainly serve those of the gay persuasion, to use that terminology. Their reason why it's going to the Supreme Court is because of the message on the T-shirt.
Okay.
They have also, as you're alluding to, they have refused T-shirts with racist Nazi symbolism. There was one with Jesus dressed as a pirate. He has refused to do this.
I don't know what the message, the content.
It's a legal distinction. This is why the courts have ruled as it has. It's not a refusal to
Because
treat
they're
them.
gay.
It's because of the message.
Outside of this, Father Joe, should the governor, a sitting governor, get involved in a Supreme Court case in which he has no standing on either side? He's not directly involved in the case.
I would prefer if the governor did not do that. I mean, I do think, you know, there's this whole question of free speech, and, you know, whether you're a public company, I mean, obviously, if we're a church company printing, let's say your church was printing it, or our synagogue, you know, because of our particular beliefs, I think you have a right to refuse. But if it's a public company, you're in a very narrow area there of refusing. But the content of the message, if it feels like, if a company says, I feel like that puts down some people elsewhere, there's some distinctions here, but I don't think the governor should be involved in
That's
this.
the question.
It's a political
That's
question.
the bottom
As a-
line. That's the easy question.
Well,
And
that's
as
the
a political
question.
journalist, the question I think that should be asked to the company is, do you want the governor involved in this fight? Because he's not won every case that his people have argued. I've been in the Supreme Court multiple times for the Bashir versus Bevin arguments, and Stephen
hurt
Pitt has
your
won
case.
some and he's lost some. And if you've won at the two lower courts, do you really need the backing?
And I
guess?
don't believe that the company, the T-shirt designer, whatever, has asked for this. This is something, and does he have the right to do so? He does.
The right,
yes, as
but
an
is it
individual citizen.
right? But
As
he's
a
not an
governor,
individual
though,
citizen.
As
He's
a
a
governor,
governor.
though, this is why he, as I understand it, he has to petition for them to allow him to do it.
Our next topic this morning on the moral side of the news, many issues are being impacted by the opioid epidemic, and that includes foster care. After a federal court ruling, Kentucky officials say that they'll now pay family members and close friends who choose to take in children to their homes. Let's listen to what WHAS 11's Robert Bradfield has to say about that.
It's a win for caregivers who are direct of kin raising foster children, a move that could help their family's bottom line.
This money would be a game changer for families who are willing to step up or who are already providing services for those kids.
A payout on average of about $750 a month per child could be coming to those who are caring for their younger relatives under a court order known as kinship caregivers. Boys and Girls Haven CEO Jeff Hadley says it's long overdue.
The child welfare system is under-resourced, and it's been under-resourced for a long time.
The payments are essentially a reimbursement to the caregivers, similar to what licensed foster parents currently receive. The assistance also applies for close family friends who take in a child who may have been removed from a home because of abuse or neglect.
What this money will help provide is as a relief for those family members who are willing to step up and help care for a family member. It'll also enable more family members to go ahead and step up and be able to provide those services.
The director of Kentucky Youth Advocates tells us this announcement is profoundly good news for Kentucky kids and families. And the president and CEO of Youthspiritus says the financial support will undoubtedly improve the long-term outcomes for many broken families. Children want to be cared for by family members, not strangers. It's a thought shared by Hadley.
Usually it's better for a child to be cared for with family members as long as those family members have been vetted and they're able to care for the family member safely.
And in Kentucky, state rules regarding kinship care have changed over the last year. There's more of a focus on trying to get children who are in the foster care system in with a trusted family member or someone connected to the family versus just getting them into the foster care system. This law allowing those families to get funds to help with some of the care of these children. The first question, I guess, for you is, were you surprised that caregivers weren't already receiving payment for fostering these children, and is this a good idea?
I think it's a great idea, but you were educating us offline about, is this something that is a recurring,
the federal
on the previous administration?
The federal ruling allows for the payment, but the focus on kinship care and the kinship care rules were changed under the Beshear administration, as I understand it. They were changed back last year when the Kentucky General Assembly tackled this, and we hear about this a lot in Frankfurt.
Changed back
there was more of a focus. No, there was more of a focus on trying to get kids involved in kinship care.
Okay, to me, you know, you're the one who always says follow the money, and the money is the issue here. These are children who have been removed from the home by the state. Okay, we're not talking about anything else. We're talking about children who are deemed to be in an unsafe environment and they don't have a parent. Yeah, abuse, neglect, drugs, jail, prison, whatever. These children are clearly best served in a family or close friend environment if that person obviously goes, you know, can pass to make sure that they're safe to do that. Not to give them the same money as you would give a stranger to take care of these children.
Or an institution.
Or an institution, right. I mean, the best setting for the child is with someone they know, and if you can't afford to do that, you can't afford to take your niece or nephews or whatever, and then they go to a stranger, then the state pays, and there aren't enough foster parents in the system as it is.
Yeah.
I mean, I think in one sense that I think this is a great idea. My question, I guess, is what's the funding consequences of all of this, especially in a state budget where cuts are happening all the time? Is it a good thing? Yes. Would it probably save us money in the long run? Yes. But I'm wondering about
the consequence of not doing it.
If we do this, then what else gets cut somewhere else to make sure this happens? That would be my concern.
And I would say, in the main, I would agree that this sounds good. But again, I'm well aware, I'm sure all of us here, there's family situations where this is not a good idea. But at the same time, Mike, along with Joe, is where's the money coming from? He's already been reported to increase this over the next few years. I forget how many millions of dollars will be increased because of this. All right, we're trying to pay for a $30 billion retirement plan anyway. Now, where's the money coming from unless we're going to increase taxes somewhere?
Well, this was federally mandated, I believe,
but
wasn't it?
State controlled.
But here's a question for all of you. In your houses of worship, are you seeing the opioid epidemic put these strains on families? And is this something you're seeing a lot of? We're hearing this in Frankfurt, that they're saying, look, the opioid epidemic has a direct impact on these children needing to be sent to foster care, that the numbers are so great. In your houses of worship, are you seeing that, Reverend Calvin?
Well, yes. I mean, opioid is just contributing to it. I mean, desperation is desperation, whether it's from opioids or other reasons. So it creates a crisis of desperation that puts these children in a desperate situation in that they are in desperate need of some care. So whether it's opioid, it could be any number of contributors that create that crisis. But if you don't do it, then the consequence is much greater than doing it. So you have to find a way to make it happen. I don't think that the relatives should be penalized because they're kin to the kids. I mean, if you can give money to a stranger or a foster parent, then a family member should be entitled to the same resources that provide for these children. In fact, it's a better quality of care, likely, than they would get from a stranger or someone that has no connection to the child. So they should not be penalized for providing care that other non-relatives or strangers would normally be entitled to.
To your question about opiates, I mean, I think what I've seen, although I'm somewhat semi-retired, which means I go around a lot of places, but I've seen a lot of tragic deaths, or possible suicides, or drug overdoses that has affected communities and families and all that, a much higher incident of that than I remember 5 years ago or 10 years ago.
In the last 6 months, I've buried 3 individuals who died as a result of opioids. Yeah.
Rabbi,
I would say that's.
are you seeing this every day?
No.
You're not seeing.
I'm not. I
the
mean,
impact?
I'm seeing opioid abuse, but not. I mean, not occasional cases, but not rampant. But you know, never mind.
And I haven't seen it directly in our church. I just haven't seen it directly.
And I ask because state officials are saying there is a direct correlation between the two, and that's one reason why it was such a hot topic. But let's move on to another topic.
Okay.
And this one
It's
is
a marathon day.
yes. This one is the John leaves. We try to cram all the topics.
Right.
John, don't worry. You don't have to have your running shoes when
Ringing
John's
the bell
back.
today.
The controversial baby tiger playtime at Southern Indiana's Wildlife in Need is on hold because of a court order. The case brought by People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, or PETA, maintain that declawing and using the young tigers in play with visitors causes physical and emotional harm to the animals. 2 experts agreed with those assertions. Wildlife in Need's owner, Tim Stark, says that he'll stop baby tiger playtime for now, and he will not declaw any big cats, but he does plan to appeal the court's ruling. So the question is, do you side with the court, or should Wildlife in Need be able to allow to continue this baby tiger playtime and declawing some of its animals?
If I may speak as probably the only hunter on the panel here, I've hunted wild animals who could hunt me back and whatever.
Bears and the like.
Exactly. But I find this, the declawing an abhorrence. If you're going to have, I have trouble with certain forms of zoos anyway, but to have these animals in the situation that we've seen there in the small cage, and to, quote, for safety reasons, is the term used for the declawing. Whose safety? What safety? It's certainly not for the animal. It's for the individuals. And I would have a major difficulty with the operation of that organization to begin with. Number 2, to declaw small young cubs so that kids can go in and say, I petted a tiger today, and pay him some money to do this. I find that is an abuse as well.
I kind of agree with that. I mean, I think I love zoos, and I think that the idea of zoos and being able to see animals, but just to for the idea of petting an animal, which is a nice idea, but what damage it does to the animal seems to be over the line. I mean, I don't think it's necessary to do that. It's trying to do a good with a poor reason. I don't think you do a good by doing something wrong to do something good.
When I was a kid, there was a place in Florida, and my brother, we have a picture of my brother. He's maybe, I don't know, 8 years old or something, and he has a baby tiger that he's holding that they pose for a picture, and they drug the animal. They like put, I don't know, maybe chloroform or who knows what over the animal's mouth, put him on the kid's lap, snap the picture, and take it away. So it was only a temporary drugging. I mean,
only a temporary drugging.
It was an opioid.
Well,
but
he's probably in rehab to this day to pull those tigers.
But I mean, I don't know. I have issues. I also love zoos, but there are some that do it really well and some that do it really badly. And
times were different when your brother was small and you went to this thing. Do you think that your family would have like in today's day and age? Do you think that your family would have taken part in something like that? If you look back, if you put your family at the time in today's
Boy, that's
society?
a tough question.
Yeah, I think
I
if a
don't
family,
think my
if a family
mother would.
realized that this animal is being drugged so you can take a picture,
Well, they
I would
knew
think
that. Or why would you let your child be with a tiger?
I would think
my
today's families would say, "Ooh, I don't feel
Really?
comfortable with
My
that."
take on this is probably set on the outside looking in from PETA. I've always admired the tenacity of PETA and how they make issues like. In fact, if we could create a contest between PETA and NRA, I think it would be a great rumble in the jungle. I think that would be a
Peter wouldn't
contest
stand a chance.
that people would pay to see. That would be the fight of the century because they appear to be as tenacious in committing and looking after the safety of these animals.
But if I may,
as NRA for the promotion of
I
guns.
may,
So I
you're
would love
talking
to see that match up.
you're talking about the safety of the animals. Remember PETA and the Max Factors
Right.
rabbits?
Right.
PETA is on record of getting millions of dollars in lawsuits and then destroying the animals they were sent to protect. I'm not a fan of PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, but on this scenario, I will agree with them. I think this is a point.
I think we need a new organization, People for the Ethical Treatment of People.
I like that. And I like that sentiment. I
That's a
like
good
that.
way to end it.
And the reason this whole thing of the animals versus
They're
human.
formidable.
Decades ago, it was decades ago, I can't say it's recently, but there was in California, a mother taking a child out for a little, and a cougar attacked.
Ooh.
And she basically fought it off enough that I think she wounded. Anyway, the long and short is the cougar died and the mother died. And so the group set up fundraising for her son and for the 2 cubs of the puma. Which do you think got more money?
Whoa.
And we had the situation at the Cincinnati Zoo.
Right.
Yeah,
With
same thing.
Harambe. So, well, here's one question that I'd like to pose to each of you with just a couple of minutes left. Part of the lawsuit is that the court agreed that it caused physical and emotional harm to the animals.
Sure.
As a hunter, do you think what emotional harm?
We know,
Amazing.
our
Do you?
physiology studies, we know now that there's not a solid wall between, what is it, 2%, less than 2% of our DNA structure is different than the chimpanzee. The DNA structure shows that there is a continuance of evolution, to use that terminology, however you want to argue that, in regards to conscious awareness. We even know now that plants can be aware. So there, to your point, my point in response would be there is a continuum of consciousness and whatever. And I would say, yes, we've seen in higher grade animals, dolphins and elephants in particular, there is great emotional response.
And Father Tony has figured out how to filibuster until the end of the program.
Get the last
He is a
word.
professional at that.
The last word.
We want to thank our whole panel because we are running out of time. But we'll start on the end. Reverend Clay Calloway with the West Louisville Ministers Coalition, Rabbi Galia Rooks with the Temple, Father Joe Graffis, Archdiocese of Louisville, and Father Tony Smith with St. Lawrence Catholic Church.
Right.
Always fun to fill in for John. John will be back next week. But we really do appreciate all of you coming here today.
Was I John enough for you today?
You mean John Slide or not
That's
John
right.
Blake?
Just like different John.
We'll call you John Jr.
All right.
from now on.
Okay.
And John will be back next week. But we thank you for joining us this week on the Moral Side of the News. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.